the bond that I would like to create between an Obama administration and the nations all across this country. The government-to-government relationship that is so critical is something that is going to be a top priority under my administration, and I want all of you to know how important it is to me.
Well, when you look at the history of the United States and you look at the accomplishments of every sitting president, no president in the history of the U.S. comes close to the accomplishments that President Obama has achieved for Indian country. He brought in hope and change, and Indian country heard that loud and clear, and we've seen the results. His actions spoke way louder than his words.
Since taking office, President Obama and his administration have made tremendous progress on some of the major issues facing Indian country. And underlying all that progress is the President's belief that tribal leaders must have a seat at the table and be part of the solution. On day one, the President started working to strengthen the government-to-government relationship between the United States, tribes, and Alaska Natives. He recognized that the best policies for Indian country come from Indian country. He made sure to appoint Native Americans to high-level positions throughout the federal government and to consult and coordinate with tribal governments on policies and issues that affect current and future generations of tribal nations. President Obama made historic trips to Indian country, and his administration has done the same from Kivalina, Alaska to the Crow Nation, from the Cherokee and Chickasaw nations to the Navajo Nation, Seminole country, and many more in between. Members of his cabinet meet regularly with tribal leaders in their homelands on their work to better serve Indian country. President Obama established the White House Council on Native American Affairs, and every year of his administration, he's hosted this White House Tribal Nations Conference.
All of the leaders in this room and so many others across the country are really indispensable partners in our efforts to fulfill the promise of the United States government's relationships with sovereign tribes. You are critical allies in our ongoing work to move this country closer to its most treasured ideals of equality, opportunity, and justice under law.
The President has worked hard to remove barriers to tribal self-determination, and he knows that starts with the restoration of tribal homelands. This administration has prioritized the restoration of homelands by placing nearly 500,000 acres into trust for tribes, and through the land buyback program, 2 million acres will be restored by the end of 2016. The President signed the Hearth Act into law so that tribes decide when and how to lease their lands, and reform leasing and right-of-way regulations to respect tribal sovereign decisions. He and his administration strongly support tribally controlled schools and have called for overall improvement in Indian education and opportunity. And in response to calls from tribal leaders, President Obama has endorsed the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Early on, the President acknowledged the United States' tragic history with tribes and charted a course to settle many long-standing court cases rather than engage in endless and expensive litigation. That includes the Cobell Settlement, the largest class action lawsuit in American history, and the RAMA Contract Support Cost Settlement. As part of the Cobell Settlement, the National Commission on Indian Trust Reform recommended improvements on how the administration can better perform its trust responsibilities. The RAMA settlement acknowledged the importance of fully reimbursing tribes when they deliver federal services. The administration has also secured a number of tribal water rights settlements, resolving decades of litigation to deliver infrastructure and water to Indian country. And President Obama's proposed budget increases for Indian country all reflect an increased acknowledgement of the sacred trust responsibility of the federal government to tribal nations.
Growing development of renewable energy in the United States will be important to tribes, not only because you hold many renewable assets, but also as a way to meet the growing threat of climate change, something that we all will be pitching in to do.
At the same time, President Obama has taken significant steps to promote the health and economic well-being of tribes and their citizens, starting with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, which provided more than $3 billion to help tribal communities renovate reservation schools, improve housing, healthcare facilities, and more, spurring job creation in Indian country. The President signed into law the Stafford Act, so that when an emergency or natural disaster occurs, tribes can go directly to FEMA for assistance, just like state governments. President Obama has also focused on promoting safe tribal communities. He signed the Tribal Law and Order Act of 2010 to improve the delivery of law enforcement services in Indian country. he signed the Violence Against Women Act to ensure that tribes can take action to bring to justice those that engage in domestic violence on their lands. This administration also publicly recognized that Native peoples are among the first Americans to come face to face with the effects of climate change, and there are now several initiatives to develop new tribal energy sources and develop natural resources.
One important food program that is available only to tribes is the Food Distribution Program on Indian reservations. We're also investing in good food for tribal youth at school. Study after study shows that when we provide food security for our youngsters, they thrive physically and mentally. Through USDA programs, tribal organizations and tribal schools are now able to provide breakfast, lunch, dinner, healthy snacks, and summer meals to our children.
And, always with an eye to the future, the Obama administration has prioritized reaching out to the Native youth through its Generation Indigenous, or Gen I initiative, with a focus on improving their opportunities for success through new investments and increased engagement. The administration launched a cabinet Native youth listening tour to take the pulse of this next generation, intent on identifying both the challenges they face and possible solutions. In that spirit, the administration sponsored the first ever White House Tribal Youth Gathering, bringing more than 1,000 Native youth from all across the country to the nation's capital to talk about cultural protection and revitalization, education, health and wellness, climate change and natural resources, tribal justice and safety, and economic opportunity.
You see, Gen I isn't just a summit. This isn't just a program. See, Gen I is a movement. You understand? It's about tribal youth from across this continent embracing your heritage, telling your stories, and teaching people about your central role in our history and our future. Gen I is about all of you investing in your promise by getting a good education. You've got to finish high school, go on to college or a vocational training program so that you are in a position to get good jobs and be the leaders that you were meant to be. And Gen I is about tribal youth coming together and raising your voices for change, not just in your nations, but in the entire United States of America.
President Obama, it has been an honor to see you make a commitment to us and meet with us annually throughout both of your administrations. It has allowed us a basis to say to future presidents that this is the standard by which that the United States government will honor and respect the very unique relationship between America and the 567 Indian nations. Thank you, sir.
On Election Day in 2008, Mr. President, when you were elected, I admit that I cried because it gave me the opportunity to be able to tell our future generations that our people too can become anything that they choose to be. You've transcended efforts of past presidents that have advocated for us, and I appreciate everything that you've done in Indian education, in healthcare, tribal justice, law and order, and sovereignty, and I want to say thank you. Che miigwech, Ogima, Obama.